We're good now, Chair, as soon as we get to 6.
Yep. Get members of the committee to come on screen. Okay. Computer. And Mr. Gordon. We've got a few seconds left before 6. All right then, welcome ladies and gentlemen to the Committee of Adjustment for this Monday, July the 5th. We have 5 members present of the Committee of Adjustment this evening, with 2 having sent their regrets for this meeting. This is an electronic meeting, virtual meeting, as is usual for in-person meetings. All code of conduct, municipal conflict of interest, and every other pertinent legislation applies to these meetings. And because it is virtual, if any member is interrupted, has their internet connection interrupted, or somehow otherwise has technical glitches, we will pause for a moment to allow them to rejoin. And assuming we still have quorum, we will continue if they're not able to rejoin. With that said, up first is the adoption of the agenda. Is there anything to add to the agenda this evening? Staff? No?
No, Your Worship.
Then I'll look for a motion to approve the agenda. Mr. Buderick, Ms. Porter, any comment? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Is there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in the general nature thereof? And Mr. Hagedorn?
Yes, I'll declare on, well, it's item 6.1, but only on the second portion of it, report number SR 1778, as it's a neighboring piece of property.
Okay, just for clarity and for all of our information, quorum for this committee is 4 or 5? To staff? Ms. Furness, do you know the answer to that?
I believe it's 4. If the clerk can confirm. But
Your Worship, it is 4.
It is 4.
He may just be off doing something else, but yes, it is 4.
Yeah, no,
Okay.
I was gonna say 4.
Just wanted to make sure. Thank you. Okay, so we'll take that declaration and we move to the approval of the Committee of Adjustment minutes, item 4.1. We have the minutes before us. Does anyone note any errors or omissions within those minutes? Seeing none, can I get a motion to approve the minutes? Ms. Porter, seconded by Mr. Gordon. Thank you. Any comment? I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. We move to the public meeting portion. We start with item 6.1, and we have a report with regard to consent conditions for well requirements. Ms. Furness, would you like to speak to this?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So the purpose of this report is to recommend that the committee endorse a change in the typical well condition that has been previously applied to rural consent applications. So the current well condition simply states that a well be established that satisfies the well water quality and quantity objectives of the Ministry of Environment, Conservation and Parks. So this is a requirement in the township's official plan for new lot creation in the rural areas, and is done primarily to ensure there's an adequate water source and to demonstrate due diligence with respect to public safety. Typically, the way this condition can be satisfied is to show that a pump test is completed that displays an adequate water supply in accordance with the ministry's objectives, And in terms of water quality, our raw water sample is taken from a third-party consultant and then is sent to a lab for testing. And then staff receive a supplementary well report indicating all the parameters that passed and failed and recommended remedial measures for any parameters that failed. Staff in the past have primarily not passed well reports that would fail in bacterial health parameters, such as E. coli, for example, as well as turbidity, which is the cloudiness in the water and showing particles that can potentially affect future treatment options. So this approach has resulted in recent applications not being able to satisfy well conditions, particularly related to turbidity. And turbidity, as well as other aesthetic parameters such as hardness or color in the water, can easily be addressed through treatment options and different equipment that can be installed to bring the well quality up to the ministry's standards, which is also always noted in the accompanying well reports on what's recommended to be installed. So staff are recommending that the township take a similar approach that's similar to some of the surrounding municipalities, more specifically Stone Mills and the town of Greater Napanee, to require a development agreement on title for those properties that have some of these aesthetic and turbidity failed parameters that can be addressed through equipment. And then staff would be able to ensure that they're able to comply with the drinking water quality objectives as it's registered on title and can be ensured that it is installed as part of the building permit process. The well quantity condition is only proposed to change just to specifically reflect the current process that we undertake to satisfy the amount to determine that there's sufficient water. So essentially just a qualified well technician installing the well and doing the pump test in accordance with the ministry guidelines. So this is the process now, but we're just proposing to lay it out so it's very clear to applicants what's required. In terms of the development agreement, all new vacant rural lots require a development agreement anyways. This is a requirement of the engineering group in order to request for a grading plan. So we wouldn't need two development agreements. One would already be done and this other piece would just be incorporated into it. So this is a recommendation that we're proposing to move forward for future consent applications to assist applicants through the process and to not put the onus on staff in interpreting these well reports when they can be addressed through treatment that we can ensure another way. Thank you.
Thank you. Committee, do we have any questions for staff on this? Ms. Porter, go ahead.
Yes, I have several questions, and these questions are more for me to try and understand, I guess, the policy a little better, or where the policy is coming from. So is this a policy under the zoning or under, like, where is this policy written?
So through you, Mr. Chair, the policy is in the official plan and also the provincial policy statement requires ensuring adequate source of water for lot creation. And the official plan specifically states that new lot creation in the rural area shall satisfy the Ministry of Environment's drinking water objectives.
Okay, so following that then, I guess being a committee member, committee of adjustment member, there's been several occasions where we have tried to speak about policy or speak about changes. And I've always been told that that's a council decision, not a committee of adjustment decision. So I'm wondering, although you're asking us to endorse this as a committee of adjustment, does this still have to go through council, and does it make a change in any way to the policy that's written in the official plan?
Yes, through you, Mr. Chair, if it required a specific policy change to the official plan in order to implement this, then I would definitely agree that it would need to be brought forward to council. In this case, the condition can be worded in a way that can still comply with the official plan because we're still ensuring that the drinking water quality objectives have been met. So it's a condition in order to satisfy it, which in my opinion, rather than staff just doing some wording tweaks, we wanted to bring it forward to the committee as well.
Okay, and If I may continue, I've got
Please.
several more questions. Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
So years ago, through my own experience, if one of the conditions couldn't be satisfied on the well report or the test report, as long as a solution was provided or a treatment method was provided, township staff would accept that. So now you're saying that we had sort of gone away from that, and now we want to go back to that. And I'm just wondering when that was changed. In my 10 years on council, I've never seen that changed, or I've never seen committee of adjustment asked to endorse a different policy.
So from my understanding from past practice, aesthetic parameters have never, staff have never failed aesthetic parameters in a well test. So this would be like color or hardness, because there are viable treatment options. However, it is best practice to ensure that those aesthetic parameters also meet the quality objectives. So we are proposing to include those in a development agreement now. In terms of turbidity, from my understanding, that has never been passed and is asked for a retest. And in terms of bacterial health parameters, because of the significant health concerns such as E. coli, that has been past practice to never pass those well tests. And just to clarify, going forward, the serious health parameter ones such as E. coli would still not pass through this change. Typically, we don't see a lot of bacterial parameters fail. Majority of well technicians would recommend that they retest anyways, and most people don't like to see that in their well quality report being sold. So they typically retest on their own before we even get the well report. So it's essentially just addressing the aesthetic values, which we never have before, and just from staff opinion, they should be included. As we have no way to determine how those treatments can be put in, because typically they send the lot sold to a new property owner. If there's no development agreement, there's no way to ensure that they're putting those treatment measures in place.
And to follow up with that, then I know from my own experience, if there was bacteria in the water on the first test, then as long as you could treat it with like a UV system, UV light or a UV system, that was acceptable. I've done most of my severances have been done in stone mills. So Loyalist, not so much. I have done a couple of Loyalist years ago, and that's what I'm referring to when I say years ago. As long as you had a treatment plan, that was acceptable. But things like bacteria, as long as that you could show that you were going to install a UV light, because many of us get bacteria in our wells even today. And we have to make sure our UV light is up to standard and operational, and that's on the individual owner to ensure that, and to ensure that they have safe drinking water. And these are questions not because I oppose, please don't take it the wrong way. I certainly support your recommendation and applaud your recommendation. I'm just trying to understand, when these policies come in, and why we are as a committee of adjustment looking at this policy and being asked to endorse it when, we've had that discussion in the past that it is a council decision. But that's just a comment. I'm not opposed to it in any way what you've done here. On just a different vein of question then, is it a requirement when you have an application to consent and you sever a lot, you're asking to sever a lot, is it a requirement to build a house?
Through you, Mr. Chair, no, we don't require someone to build to take out a building permit and do it. I mean, someone can sell the vacant lot and someone may have plans not to build for years. But we have set up based on the zoning bylaw of the day on what the requirements are for that lot, which would be deemed to now be an existing lot of record in accordance with the current zoning bylaw. So we don't force anybody to build.
Okay, just following on that logic then, I know that lots of records that aren't newly established. The requirements for the well and the requirements to meet the applicable safety measures for the well are done at building permit application time, and not. So I'm just wondering, is that just a double kind of? You do it now when you sever, and you do it again when you get a building permit, or is like I'm just wondering why we're doing it at consent when it's not a requirement to build a house, and it could be done at building permit time, as it is with existing lots.
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, no, that's a good question. I think essentially because at the consent, the building division can confirm what was satisfied as part of the consent process and in ensuring that all these pieces have been established. But for the consent process, we have to determine that it's a viable building lot before creating the lot. So if the lot was created and we didn't know that there was a potable water supply on it, we couldn't meet any of our standards for the official plan and PPS provincial policy statement in creating that lot, and could run into the issue at the building permit stage, where now someone has submitted a building permit and we have created a lot that now they can't get potable water on. So in terms of there's the not being able to comply with policy, and then I think the liability issues on the township creating a lot without checking to see if there's a sufficient water supply on the property as well.
Okay, no, that's fair enough, and I thank you for that answer. Just want to just make mention that not every single person that severs a lot is intending on building, right? It's not necessarily a building lot being created, it's a separate parcel being created. And that language is important to note. And that's why, we're kind of putting a blanket ruling on every single parcel of land, regardless of the intent of the person, that it is applying for the consent.
Okay, are there any other questions from any other members? Sorry, my phone was going off. If there are no other questions, I actually completely concur with Ms. Porter. As I was reading this, I was, debating in my own head, is this a policy or is this something that the Committee of Adjustment can be dealing with? And I greatly appreciate Ms. Furness's answer. As I'm interpreting it, I see it as a practice, not an adjustment to policy. And with that, I think it's appropriate for this venue. Any final questions? And I'll go back to the recommendation and look for the committee to make a motion. I'll go to Mr. Hagedorn, seconded by Ms. Porter. Any comments?
No.
I'm seeing no comments. And then I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. And so we move on to SR 1778, 138 Mud Lake Road. And Mr. Hagedorn has declared a conflict on this. And Ms. Furness, you have a presentation.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this is in regards to a recommended change of condition for a severance application located at 138 Mud Lake Road. And this consent was provisionally approved by the Committee of Adjustment on January 4th, 2021. So any change of condition has to be approved by the Committee of Adjustment. This particular case is an example of one such issue that has arisen from why we're looking at doing that previous well change condition. So essentially, the owner has conducted 3 well tests, all failing the turbidity parameters in the ministry's drinking water objectives. So, in turbidity, essentially measuring the cloudiness of the water, and can be treated through or is recommended by the well technician to have a UV light as well as a partial filter to filter out all those particles. So as a result, staff are recommending that the well condition be changed to require a development agreement to ensure that the equipment treatment is installed for this turbidity value. And as a development agreement is already required as part of this provisional consent approval in order for a grading plan, we would simply just work it into the same agreement. We've had discussions with the applicant as well, the owner and the well technician, and they're all supportive of the condition change.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Council or committee, do we have any questions for Ms. Furness on this? Seeing none, this is a public meeting, and this is the appropriate time for anyone in attendance to voice their comments. But I note that there's no one in attendance right now. I'll just double check that with the clerk.
No attendees.
And so if there's no attendees, there's no one to voice an opinion on this. Back to the committee. Unless you have further questions, I look for a motion. Ms. Porter, so moved. Thank you. Seconded by Mr. Gordon. Thank you. Any comments? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Any opposed? Motion is carried. Thank you. We'll come back to the agenda. That's it for the agenda. So the next meeting date is scheduled for August the 3rd. And unless there's anything further, I'll look for a motion to adjourn. And Mr. Buderick and Mr. Gordon. All right. I'll call the question. All those in favor, please raise a hand. Motion is carried. We are adjourned. I would note that we have committee of the whole coming up. I know the staff need about 10 minutes. So we'll target 6:30 for starting the committee of the whole meeting. With that, I will say, see you in a few minutes.